The kitchen clock read 11:47 p.m. when I heard Lana's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She wasn't supposed to be awake. Hell, she wasn't supposed to be here at all, not with that suitcase packed and sitting by the front door like a loaded weapon. "Scott?" Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. "I thought you'd be gone by now. Didn't you say you were leaving for your fishing trip tonight?" I turned from the coffee maker, letting my eyes meet hers. Lana stood in the doorway wearing that silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago, back when I still believed her lies came wrapped in love instead of manipulation. "Trip's canceled," I said, watching her face carefully. "So is your vacation." The color drained from her cheeks, but she recovered quickly. Lana always did have excellent reflexes when it came to covering her tracks. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of that expensive perfume she only wore for special occasions. Or special people. "You've been planning this fishing trip for months." Funny thing about plans, Lana. Sometimes they change when you discover your wife has been making her own arrangements. I pulled out my phone, opened Facebook, and updated my relationship status to single. The notification sound echoed in the silence between us. Her eyes widened as she watched me cancel our upcoming anniversary dinner reservation with 3 quick taps. "Scott, what are you—" "I saw your post yesterday. Men think they own you until you show them who's really in control." Interesting philosophy. I pocketed the phone and leaned against the counter. "Tell me, how long has Eric been helping you explore that theory?" The mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw the real Lana underneath all that carefully constructed innocence. The woman who'd been playing me for a fool while she planned her escape with my former best friend. "You're being paranoid," she said, but her voice shook. "Eric and I are just friends. You know that." "Friends who take business trips together to romantic bed and breakfasts in Vermont?" I watched her face crumble as the reality hit her. "Friends who share hotel rooms and post about liberation from controlling husbands?" Lana's hands trembled as she reached for the kitchen island, steadying herself. "How did you—" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Mrs. Crick has excellent eyesight for a 70-year-old. She saw you loading that suitcase into Eric's car yesterday morning, saw you kiss him goodbye too. I moved closer, enjoying the way she flinched. She also mentioned how you've been meeting him at that little coffee shop on Maple Street every Tuesday for the past 3 months. Scott, please, let me explain. No explanations needed. I understand perfectly. I walked past her toward the hallway. Pack whatever you need for tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss the details of your permanent vacation from this marriage. She grabbed my arm as I passed. You can't just throw me out. This is my house, too. I looked down at her manicured fingers digging into my sleeve, then back at her face. Actually, Lana, it's not. The deed is in my name. The mortgage payments come from my account. Even that car in the driveway is registered to my business. Her grip loosened. But the lawyer said... Your lawyer said what you wanted to hear. My lawyer actually read the paperwork. I gently removed her hand from my arm. You might want to call Eric. I'm sure he'll be happy to provide accommodation for his business partner. Lana's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, anger, calculation, and finally, desperation. Scott, we can work this out. It doesn't have to be like this. You're right. It didn't have to be like this. I headed for the stairs, then paused. By the way, you left your other phone in the glove compartment of your car. The one with all those interesting text messages and photos. I took the liberty of backing everything up to the cloud. The sound she made wasn't quite a gasp, wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of someone realizing their carefully laid plans had just collapsed around them. I climbed the stairs, leaving her standing in our kitchen. Correction, my kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of her deception. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight. But tonight, for the first time in months, I'd sleep peacefully knowing exactly where I stood. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win it. The next morning brought rain and revelation in equal measure. I sat in my office at Halperin Classic Restorations, watching droplets race down the windows while Benny Martinez worked on a '67 Mustang in the bay below. The familiar sounds of his tools created a rhythm that helped me think. My phone buzzed with another message from Madison, Lana's best friend and chief enabler. The third one since dawn. Scott, Lana is devastated. She says you're being unreasonable. Can't you two work this out like adults? I typed back, adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back with mutual friends, but thanks for your concern. The response came immediately. She made a mistake. Everyone deserves a second chance. Some mistakes don't get second chances, Madison. Ask Eric about that when you see him. I set the phone aside and opened the laptop. Time to do some research on my wife's new business partner. Eric Masters, life coach and motivational speaker, had quite the online presence. His website featured professional photos of him looking thoughtful against various outdoor backdrops, along with testimonials from satisfied clients. Interesting how many of those clients were married women. Boss? Benny's voice carried up from the shop floor. You got a minute? I headed downstairs where Benny stood wiping his hands on a shop rag. At 28, he had the kind of mechanical intuition that couldn't be taught, only developed through years of making engines purr. More importantly, he had the kind of loyalty that money couldn't buy. What's on your mind, Ben? Heard some talk around town about you and Lana. He met my eyes directly. None of my business, but if you need anything at all, you just say the word. Appreciate that. Actually, there is something. I pulled out my keys and tossed them to him. Think you could install a GPS tracker on Lana's Honda? The kind that sends location updates to my phone? Benny caught the keys with a grin. The kind for keeping track of teenage drivers? Exactly that kind. Consider it done. Anything else? Keep your ears open. Small towns have big mouths, and I have a feeling people are going to be talking. He nodded and headed back to work. I returned to my office and spent the next hour making calls. First to my lawyer, confirming the legal realities of my situation, then to my accountant, discussing the financial implications of divorce. Finally, to my insurance agent, updating beneficiaries and coverage details. By noon, I had a clear picture of the battlefield. Lana had overplayed her hand, assuming I'd be too hurt or too proud to fight back effectively. She'd underestimated both my resources and my resolve. My phone rang. Gus Henley, owner of the Lakeside Tavern and unofficial mayor of our town's gossip network. Scott, you got a minute to talk? Always got time for you, Gus. What's going on? Might be nothing, might be something. That friend of yours, Eric Masters, he's been making himself comfortable around here lately. Buying drinks for the ladies, talking about his coaching business. That so? Thing is, I remember him from about 2 years back. Different name then, Eric Masterson. Had some trouble with a married woman down in Portland. Husband caught them together, made quite a scene. Eric left town in a hurry. I sat forward in my chair. What kind of trouble? The expensive kind. Husband was a lawyer, had connections. Word was Eric had been running this same game for years, targeting unhappy wives, promising them a new life, then moving on once things got complicated. Gus, you're a treasure. Just looking out for my neighbors. You need anything else, you know where to find me. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Eric Masters wasn't just a home wrecker. He was a professional home wrecker, a con artist who specialized in married women with money and low self-esteem. My phone buzzed with a location update from the GPS tracker. Lana was at the Starbucks on Maple Street. Right on schedule for her Tuesday meeting, I grabbed my jacket and headed out. Time to do a little reconnaissance of my own. The Starbucks sat in a strip mall between a yoga studio and a boutique that sold overpriced candles. I parked across the street and waited. At 2:15, Eric's black BMW pulled into the lot. He stepped out looking like a magazine ad for successful middle-aged men. Expensive haircut, designer clothes, confident swagger. At 2:20, Lana arrived in her Honda. She'd dressed carefully for this meeting, wearing the blue dress I'd complimented her on last month. The irony wasn't lost on me. They embraced in the parking lot, and I took photos with my phone's zoom lens. Not for legal purposes. I didn't need evidence of adultery for a no-fault divorce. These were for something else entirely. I watched them through the coffee shop window, noting their body language, their obvious intimacy. They looked like a couple making plans, discussing logistics, probably figuring out their next move now that I'd disrupted their timeline. After 45 minutes, they parted ways with another embrace. Eric headed north toward his rental house on the lake. Lana drove south, probably to Madison's condo where she'd been staying since our kitchen confrontation. I followed Eric, maintaining a safe distance. His rental sat on a prime piece of lakefront property, the kind of place that costs serious money during tourist season. Either Eric's life coaching business was more profitable than I'd thought, or he had other sources of income. As I drove home, my phone rang, Lana's number. Scott, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere neutral? The Lakeside Tavern, 1 hour. I was thinking somewhere more private. Gus's place or nowhere, Lana. Your choice. A pause. Fine. 1 hour. I smiled as I hung up. Public venues were always better for difficult conversations, harder for people to make scenes when they had an audience to consider. Time to see what my wife had to say for herself. The Lakeside Tavern occupied a converted Victorian house overlooking the water, its wraparound porch and nautical decor drawing both tourists and locals alike. I arrived early, carefully selecting a corner booth with clear sightlines to both entrances. Gus, the bartender, nodded at me from behind the bar, understanding without needing words that I wanted privacy for this conversation. At exactly 4 p.m., Lana walked in, scanning the room before her eyes locked onto mine. She'd changed since her coffee date with Eric, swapping her blue dress for jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Another calculated choice to soften the edges, to make me doubt myself. But I wasn't fooled. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Her tone was soft, almost pleading. "You said we needed to talk, so talk." She folded her hands on the table, her gaze focused on them for a moment before she lifted her eyes to meet mine. And then I noticed it. She'd removed her wedding ring. The absence was stark, like a symbol of everything she'd already decided. "I know how this looks, Scott," she began, her voice careful, almost rehearsed. "I know you're hurt and angry, but things aren't what you think they are." "Really?" "Then explain what I saw yesterday. Explain the hotel reservations I found. Explain the text messages about leaving your controlling husband." Her composure cracked just slightly, her lips trembling for a fraction of a second. "You had no right to go through my private communications." "I had every right. We're married, Lana. Or were you planning to mention your change of heart before or after your romantic getaway?" Her eyes flickered, guilt creeping across her face. "It's not like that with Eric. He's helping me figure things out, helping me understand what I want from life." "And what you want doesn't include me," I said flatly, not allowing her to sidestep the truth. She looked down at her hands, clearly struggling to maintain her calm. "I don't know anymore," she whispered. "These past few months I've felt so trapped, so invisible, like I was disappearing into your life instead of living my own." "So you decided to find yourself in Eric's bed?" Her breath caught, and she stopped herself, realizing the weight of the words. "We haven't—" She faltered, clearly aware that her attempt to dodge the truth was falling apart. "It's complicated." "No, Lana, it's simple," I said, leaning forward, my voice firm. "You wanted out of our marriage, but were too cowardly to ask for a divorce. So you started an affair and planned to make me the villain when I inevitably discovered it." Gus approached at that moment, placing 2 coffee cups on the table without a word before retreating to the bar, giving us space. I didn't need to acknowledge him. This was our conversation. "That's not fair," Lana said, her voice shaking slightly now. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Your expectations, your need to control everything." "Control everything? Like what?" I interrupted, the edge in my voice sharper now. "Like our social life, our finances, even what I wear to events. You have opinions about everything I do." "Having preferences isn't the same as being controlling. And last I checked, you had access to all our accounts, made your own decisions about clothes, friends, and everything else." Lana took a sip of her coffee, her fingers trembling as she tried to regroup. "Eric says—" I cut her off immediately. "I don't care what Eric says. Eric is a con artist who preys on unhappy wives. Did you know he used a different name in Portland? Did you know he's pulled this same routine at least 3 times in the past 5 years? Lana's face blanched, her eyes widening slightly as the full weight of my words hit her. "No, I didn't know that," she said quietly, the color draining from her cheeks. I let the silence stretch between us for a moment before continuing. "Eric's been using you, Lana, and you've let him. You were so desperate to escape. You ignored the red flags. You ignored the truth because it was easier to blame me for everything wrong in your life." Her shoulders sagged, and she bit her lip, unsure of how to respond. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization dawning that she had been manipulated, not just by Eric, but by her own desires. She'd been willing to believe the lies because they were what she wanted to hear. "You wanted out, but you couldn't bring yourself to face the truth," I said, my voice softening just slightly, not out of sympathy, but out of an understanding that she was only human. "So you made me the villain, and when I found out, you played the victim." "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered, the tears welling up in her eyes once again. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. You did it anyway." She looked at me, her eyes searching for something. Remorse, maybe, but it wasn't enough. "I never stopped loving you," she said, a tear slipping down her cheek. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "That's what they all say, Lana. But love isn't supposed to be a game of manipulation. It's not supposed to come with conditions or lies." She sat there, staring at the coffee cup in front of her, the weight of what she had done pressing down on her. There was no easy way out for her now, no excuse that could undo the damage. After a long pause, she asked quietly, "So what now?" I looked at her one last time, and in that moment, I finally understood that this wasn't about saving what we had. It was about letting go of something that had already died. Now you figure out what's left, clean up the mess you made, and maybe, just maybe, you start learning to live for yourself instead of running away from the truth. With that, I stood up, leaving the booth behind me. The war, in all its bitter finality, was over. It wasn't won with strategy or cunning. It was won because I had chosen to face the truth, no matter how painful. Sometimes that's all you need. The color drained from her face. That's not true. Ask him. Better yet, ask the women he left behind when their husbands got too close to the truth. Lana stared at me, uncertainty replacing confidence. You're lying. You're just trying to turn me against him because you're jealous. I'm trying to save you from making a mistake that'll cost you everything. But if you'd rather learn the hard way, that's your choice? What do you mean, cost me everything? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I mean, Eric Masters is using you, Lana. He's not interested in building a life with you. He's interested in whatever he can get from you before he moves on to his next target. You don't know him like I do. I know his type. Charming, attentive, full of advice about how you deserve better, makes you feel special, understood, appreciated, right up until he disappears with whatever he came for. She shook her head, but I could see doubt creeping in. Even if that were true, it doesn't change what's wrong between us. You're right, it doesn't change anything. Our marriage is over, Lana. The only question now is whether we handle this like adults, or whether I have to protect myself from whatever scheme you and Eric have cooked up. There's no scheme. I just want to be happy. Then file for divorce. Take your half of whatever the court says you're entitled to and start over. But do it honestly, not by sneaking around and playing games. She met my eyes for the first time since sitting down. And if I do that, you won't fight me. You won't try to make this difficult. I won't make it any more difficult than it has to be, but I also won't make it easy for you to take advantage of me. Lana nodded slowly. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. Just remember, every day you wait is another day Eric has to plan his exit strategy. She stood up, leaving her coffee untouched. I never wanted to hurt you, Scott. But you did it anyway. After she left, Gus wandered over with a fresh cup of coffee. How'd that go? About as expected. She's still convinced Eric is her ticket to happiness. Some people got to learn things the hard way. Yeah, well, I'm done being her safety net. From now on, she can deal with the consequences of her choices. My phone buzzed with a text from Benny. GPS shows her heading to the BMW's location. Want me to keep monitoring? I typed back, absolutely, and thanks for the heads up. Gus refilled my cup. You know, Scott, I've seen a lot of marriages come and go in this business. The ones that end badly usually involve folks who can't tell the difference between love and possession. Which category do we fall into? From where I sit, looks like she confused attention with affection, and you confused trust with blindness. Neither one of you was seeing the other person clearly. I considered that as I watched the sun set over the lake. Maybe Gus was right. Maybe we'd both been living in a fantasy, just different versions of the same story. But fantasy or not, the story was ending. And I intended to write the final chapter myself. 3 days passed before Lana made her next move. I spent the time gathering information, consulting with lawyers, and preparing for whatever came next. The GPS tracker showed her splitting time between Madison's condo and Eric's rental, with occasional trips to coffee shops and restaurants where they presumably planned their future. On Thursday morning, she struck. I arrived at the garage to find Benny waiting with a grim expression and a stack of papers. What's this? I asked. Legal documents. Some guy in a suit served them about an hour ago. Said you'd know what they were about. I scanned the first page and felt my jaw tighten. Restraining order. Lana was claiming I'd threatened her, made her fear for her safety, and engaged in stalking behavior. The order prohibited me from coming within 500 feet of her, contacting her directly, or accessing our joint accounts. This is creative, I muttered. Boss, you never threatened her, right? I mean, I know you're not that kind of guy, but... No threats, Ben. Just uncomfortable truths she didn't want to hear. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. Richard, Scott Halperin, I need you to look at something. 20 minutes later, Richard Kellerman arrived at the garage. At 62, he'd been practicing family law longer than I'd been alive, and his reputation for thoroughness was legendary. This is interesting. he said after reviewing the documents. Very specific allegations, but no supporting evidence. No police reports, no witnesses, no documentation of threats. Because there weren't any threats. I believe you, but the question is whether we can prove it. He looked up from the papers. Do you have any recordings of your conversations with her? No, but I might have something better. I explained about the GPS tracker and the evidence I'd gathered about Eric's background. Richard smiled. That could be useful. File a counter motion, claim she's making false allegations to gain advantage in divorce proceedings. Meanwhile, let's dig deeper into Mr. Masters' history. After he left, I sat in my office considering my options. Lana had escalated the conflict, probably on Eric's advice. Time to respond in kind. I called Ray Morrison, a former boxer who ran security for several local businesses. We'd known each other since high school, and I trusted him to handle delicate situations with appropriate discretion. Ray, Scott Halperin, I need a favor. Name it. I need someone to keep an eye on my wife and her boyfriend. Nothing illegal, just surveillance. Can you help me out? When do you need me to start? How about now? That evening, my phone rang. Ray's voice was calm, professional. Your wife and the boyfriend are at Chez Laurent, that fancy French place downtown. They're celebrating something. Champagne, expensive dinner, the works. Celebrating what? Hard to say from here, but they look pretty happy about something. I thanked Ray and hung up, then drove to Chez Laurent. The restaurant sat on the second floor of a converted brownstone, its windows offering a clear view of the dining room. I parked across the street and watched. Lana and Eric sat at a corner table, leaning close together in animated conversation. She was showing him something on her phone, and he was nodding approvingly. They looked like conspirators sharing secrets. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop watching us or I'll call the police. I looked up at the restaurant window. Lana was staring down at me, phone in hand. I typed back, public street, public restaurant. No law against looking. Her response came quickly. This is harassment. The restraining order doesn't prevent me from driving on public roads or eating at public establishments. But thanks for the legal advice. I saw her show Eric the phone, saw him stand up and head for the stairs. Time to leave. Eric emerged from the restaurant as I pulled away, his face red with anger. He shouted something I couldn't hear, then kicked at the curb in frustration. At home, I poured a glass of wine and called Ray back. They left the restaurant about 10 minutes after you did, he reported. Went straight to his place. She's still there. Thanks, Ray. Keep me posted if anything interesting happens. Will do. Oh, and Scott, you might want to check your email. I sent you something that might interest you. I opened my laptop and found Ray's message. Attached were several photos taken with a telephoto lens, Lana and Eric at dinner, their body language intimate and conspiratorial. But more interesting were the photos of Eric's car, including clear shots of the license plate and a parking permit hanging from the rearview mirror. The permit was for a gym in Portland, the same gym where Eric Masterson had worked as a trainer before his name change and career pivot to life coaching. I forwarded the photos to Richard with a note. More evidence of Eric's Portland connection might be useful for the counter motion. Then I opened a new document and began typing. If Lana wanted to play legal games, I'd give her something to think about. A detailed timeline of her affair, complete with dates, locations, and supporting evidence. Not for court. I didn't need to prove adultery for a no-fault divorce. This was for something else entirely. My phone rang. Madison's number. Scott, you need to stop this. Lana is scared, and Eric is talking about getting his own restraining order. Eric should be scared. Has Lana told you about his history with married women? That's just gossip. You're being vindictive because you can't accept that she's moved on. Madison, do me a favor. Google Eric Masterson, Portland, Maine. Then call me back. I hung up and returned to my timeline. By midnight, I had a comprehensive document detailing 3 months of deception, complete with evidence and witness statements. Tomorrow, I'd find out just how committed Lana was to her new relationship when the truth about Eric became public knowledge. Friday morning brought unseasonably warm weather and unexpected visitors. I was reviewing invoices when Benny knocked on my office door. Boss, there's a lady here wants to talk to you. Says it's about Eric Masters. The woman waiting in the shop looked to be in her early 40s, professionally dressed but with the worn expression of someone who'd been through difficult times. Mr. Halperin, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I drove up from Portland after hearing about your situation. What situation is that, Ms. Walsh? The one involving Eric Masters and your wife. I saw the photos online, recognized him immediately. She pulled out her phone and showed me a Facebook post, one of the pictures Ray had taken, shared in a local community group with the caption, "Anyone know this guy?" I know him as Eric Masterson, she continued. He destroyed my marriage 2 years ago. I invited her into my office and listened as she told her story. Eric had approached her at a gym, offered life coaching services, gradually convinced her that her husband was holding her back from her true potential. The affair lasted 6 months before her husband discovered it and filed for divorce. The worst part wasn't the affair, Jennifer said. It was what happened after. Eric convinced me to take out loans, invest in his business ventures, even forge my husband's signature on some documents. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd disappeared with over $50,000. Did you report it to the police? I tried, but he was careful about how he structured everything. Technically, I gave him the money willingly. The forgery was harder to prove because I'd been handling my husband's business affairs for years. She showed me more photos, Eric with different hair, different clothes, but unmistakably the same man. I've been tracking him ever since, trying to warn his other victims. There have been at least 4 women that I know of. What happened to them? Same pattern every time. He targets unhappy wives with access to money, convinces them to leave their husbands, then disappears once he's gotten what he wants. Usually takes between 3 and 6 months. I thought about Lana's timeline with Eric. 3 months and counting. Ms. Walsh, would you be willing to speak with my lawyer and possibly testify if this goes to court? Absolutely. That man needs to be stopped. After Jennifer left, I called Richard and filled him in. Then I called Ray. I need you to dig deeper into Eric's activities. Bank accounts, credit reports, anything you can find legally. Already on it. Guy's got a pattern of opening accounts, building credit, then maxing everything out before disappearing. Currently has about $15,000 in credit card debt, and a lease on that BMW that's 3 months behind. Interesting. What about Lana? She's been at his place since yesterday. GPS shows her car hasn't moved. That afternoon, Madison called. Scott, I Googled that name you mentioned. We need to talk. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the usual gossip networks. Madison looked shaken, her usual confidence replaced by obvious worry. Is it true? About Eric and those other women? Jennifer Walsh drove up from Portland this morning to confirm it. Eric Masters is Eric Masterson, and he's a professional con artist. Madison stared into her latte. Lana won't listen to me. I tried to show her the articles, the court documents, everything. She says it's all lies, that you're paying people to make up stories. What do you think? I think she's in serious trouble and too proud to admit it. Madison looked up at me. Scott, I know I haven't been fair to you through this whole thing. I encouraged her to stand up for herself, to explore her options. I never thought it would go this far. Where is she now? Still at his place. She's talking about moving to California with him, starting fresh somewhere new. With what money? Madison's face went pale. She took out a loan against her car yesterday, $25,000, said it was for their new life together. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Madison, I need you to do something for me. I need you to get Lana to meet you somewhere public. Tell her you want to apologize, that you support her decision. Why? Because Eric is about to disappear, and when he does, Lana's going to be left holding the bag for whatever debts he's accumulated. If we can get her away from him, maybe we can minimize the damage. Madison nodded. I'll try, but Scott? She's different now, harder, like she's made up her mind and doesn't care about the consequences. People change when they're scared, and right now, Lana should be very scared. That evening, Madison texted me. She agreed to meet tomorrow at the farmer's market, 10 a.m. I forwarded the message to Ray and Richard, then sat back to plan my next move. Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation, the moment when all of Eric's lies and Lana's delusions came crashing down. I just hoped there would be something left to salvage when the dust settled. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for the weekly farmer's market that transformed the town square into a bustling maze of vendors and shoppers. I arrived early and positioned myself at a coffee stand with a clear view of the central fountain where Madison had arranged to meet Lana. At 9:45, I spotted them, Lana walking alone from the parking area looking around nervously. She'd lost weight in the past week, and her clothes hung loosely on her frame. The confident woman I'd married had been replaced by someone who looked hunted, desperate. Madison approached from the opposite direction, and they embraced awkwardly before finding an empty bench near the fountain. I couldn't hear their conversation from my position, but their body language told the story. Madison was animated, urgent, showing Lana something on her phone. Lana kept shaking her head, her posture defensive. My phone buzzed. Ray's voice was tense. Scott, we've got a problem. Eric's packing his car. Looks like he's getting ready to run. How long do I have? Hard to say. He's moving fast, but he's got a lot of stuff. I ended the call and walked toward the fountain. Time to force the issue. Hello, Lana. She looked up, startled. Scott, what are you doing here? Same thing as you. Meeting with Madison. I sat down on the bench across from them, though I suspect we're here for different reasons. The restraining order doesn't apply to public spaces where we happen to encounter each other accidentally. I looked at Madison. Did you show her the articles? Madison nodded. She won't listen. Because they're lies, Lana said, but her voice lacked conviction. Eric explained everything. Those women were unstable, vindictive. They made up stories when their relationships didn't work out. All 4 of them? Including Jennifer Walsh, who drove up from Portland yesterday to warn you? Lana's face went white. Jennifer was here? She told me about the $50,000 Eric stole from her, about the forged documents, the fake business ventures, the pattern of targeting married women with money. That's not. Eric wouldn't. Lana, where is Eric right now? She hesitated. He's at home, packing for our trip to California. Packing? I thought you weren't leaving until next week. Plans changed. We decided to leave early, avoid all the drama and negativity. Madison and I exchanged glances. Lana, Madison said gently, when did Eric decide to move up the timeline? Yesterday, after we got the loan approved. He said it would be better to start fresh immediately, not give people time to cause more trouble. What loan? I asked, though I already knew. $25,000 against my car, for our new apartment in San Diego to get established until Eric's coaching business takes off. My phone rang. Ray again. Scott, he's loaded and moving. Heading toward the highway, I stood up. Lana, Eric is leaving, right now, without you. That's impossible. We're supposed to meet back at his place in an hour. Call him? She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed. We all heard it go straight to voicemail. He's probably just busy packing, she said, but doubt was creeping into her voice. Try again. Same result. Then she tried texting, her fingers flying over the screen. No response. Lana, I said gently, we need to go to his place, now. The drive took 10 minutes, with Lana following Madison and me in her Honda. Eric's rental house sat empty, the driveway vacant except for oil stains where his BMW had been parked. Lana ran to the front door and pounded on it. Eric, are you there? The landlord, Mrs. Peterson, emerged from the main house, looking annoyed. If you're looking for Eric, he left about an hour ago, paid his remaining rent in cash, and took off without a forwarding address. Lana stood frozen for a moment, staring at the empty driveway. Reality seemed to hit her all at once, the denial she had clung to unraveling before her eyes. He said he was packing. He said we were leaving together, she murmured, her voice breaking as the truth settled in. I turned to Mrs. Peterson, my voice calm but insistent. What did he take with him? Everything that was his, she replied with a shrug. Left the furniture that came with the place, but all his personal stuff is gone. Oh, and he asked me to give this to anyone who came looking for him. She handed Lana an envelope, and my stomach tightened as I watched Lana's hands tremble. Inside the envelope was a brief note. Sorry things didn't work out. You deserve better than I can give you. Take care of yourself. Lana read it twice, her face falling with each word. Then, in one swift motion, she crumpled the note up, her anger and confusion bubbling to the surface. This doesn't make sense. We had plans. We were going to start over together. I glanced at Madison, who had been standing quietly beside us. She stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. Lana, he took your money and ran, just like he did to those other women. The truth hit her like a physical blow. She collapsed onto the front steps, her face buried in her hands, her sobs echoing in the silence of the yard. Oh, God, what have I done? She gasped between breaths. I sat down beside her, careful to maintain some distance, giving her space to process everything. You made a mistake. A big one, but not necessarily a fatal one. She looked up at me, eyes swollen with tears, her voice barely above a whisper. I destroyed our marriage for a con artist. I took out a loan I can't repay. I believed every lie he told me about you, about us, about everything. The marriage was already in trouble, Lana, I said quietly, trying to offer her some kind of understanding. Eric didn't cause that. He just took advantage of it. She stared at me through her tears, the weight of it all pressing down on her. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about that question, really took a moment to consider it. I wasn't sure if I could forgive everything, but I could at least try to understand her. I can forgive you for being unhappy. I can even forgive you for the affair, but I can't forget that when you had problems with our marriage, your solution was to lie, cheat, and planned to take half of everything I'd worked for while running off with another man. Her eyes welled up again, but there was something resigned in her expression. So what happens now? I stood up and looked down at her, trying to keep my emotions in check. Now you figure out how to clean up this mess. File a police report about the money Eric took, though I doubt you'll see it again. Deal with the loan payments you're stuck with. Find a place to live and a way to support yourself. She wiped at her eyes, as if trying to hold herself together for just a moment longer. And us? I shook my head, feeling a sense of finality settle into my chest. There is no us, Lana. There hasn't been for months. You made that choice when you decided Eric Masters was your ticket to happiness. As I turned and began walking away, I heard her start crying again. Part of me wanted to stop, to offer her more comfort, to tell her it would be okay. But the larger part of me felt something else. Relief. The burden I'd carried for so long was finally lifted, and I wasn't sure how long I'd been waiting for this moment. It wasn't just about the marriage anymore. It was about the truth. And now that it was all out in the open, I felt lighter, almost free. The war was over. I'd won by default, not because I was smarter or stronger, but because I'd chosen to fight for the truth while my opponents had built their strategy on lies. Sometimes that's enough.